After nearly a decade of leading CNN as a network president, Jeff Zucker abruptly resigned yesterday. He admitted he'd failed to disclose a relationship with a senior network executive at the company, which was uncovered during an ongoing investigation into Chris Cuomo's CNN tenure. It was 2 months ago that Zucker fired the primetime anchor for his role in the then New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's handling of his harassment scandal. And in a memo to employees yesterday, Zucker wrote that as part of the Cuomo investigation, quote, "I was asked about a consensual relationship with my closest colleague. I acknowledged the relationship evolved in recent years. I was required to disclose it when it began, but I didn't. I was wrong." And now, the fallout. Joining me to discuss are Justin Baragona, media reporter with the Daily Beast, and Joanna Weiss, editor of Experience magazine. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
You know, Justin, I just went through my other job training where I went through a multiple question thing about making sure that I disclose any relationships that I had that might be improper to HR. Did Zucker not need to go through that? Is he exempt from those? What's the latest?
Well, I mean, obviously, what we've heard is that this relationship was an open secret within CNN as it was. So they're trying to say, or at least Zucker's trying to say, that he did not disclose it. He forgot to disclose it. Allison Gullist is saying that, the relationship changed during COVID and they just, forgot to let corporate know. But from everybody's reporting, and even all the way back to Katie Couric's book, I mean, they'd been together for a while, but they're now both divorced, consensual relationship, but it's within the workplace. You could see favoritism within, so yes, the improper nature of it without disclosing it became a problem. Zucker wanted to be able to stay on for a little bit longer. The board said, no, you either are going to resign or we're going to fire you. Your choice.
Joanna, how does this happen? This is the part that really makes my head explode. If I were in charge of a company and I was doing something that was, maybe I was just taking home company supplies on a regular basis, right? And we definitely weren't supposed to do that. That was a big deal. And I was then investigating an employee who may have been taking home company supplies without permission. I probably would make sure my house was in order, especially if this was a consensual relationship that everyone knew about. There doesn't seem to be anything untoward about it except for between their marriages, and that's their business. Why does this happen?
Yeah, in media and in politics, it's hypocrisy that winds up getting people in the end, isn't it? It's not necessarily the act. I mean, I agree. This was an act of questionable judgment at best. On a scale of transgressions, this was not sort of Roger Ailes, but something on a different end of that spectrum. That said, even if it was an open secret, you're right. It was, and I think it often has to do with hubris, and it often has to do with a feeling that you're so important, you've gotten away with something for so long, everybody knows about it anyway, it doesn't matter, the rules don't apply to you. It's been interesting to read the coverage and see that a lot of certainly the top talent at CNN was really shocked by this and is standing by Zucker and was very upset and was really questioning Jason Kilar, if I'm pronouncing that right, and really trying to pin down what's the real story here. Is this really the reason for firing, or is there much more to the story?
Yeah, and Justin, they seem to be presenting it too in the light that this is Cuomo's fault. Because Cuomo is the one that ultimately is getting in trouble, and perhaps in his work at trying to get a better settlement from CNN, this was unearthed as if it needed to be unearthed because, as you said, I read it in Katie Couric's book, and it intrigued me, and I didn't even know what was going on. Is there an effort here to try and paint somebody as the bad guy?
Well, interesting that you say that about the bad guy, because in a DC meeting last night with the top CNN stars and staffers and Kilar, Jake Tapper himself said how are we letting the bad guy win here? Referencing Chris Cuomo. It's a multi-pronged thing here. Among at least the on-air talent in much of the top brass over at CNN, Jeff Zucker was a beloved figure. Him going in this way, in this matter, and seemingly within the context of the Chris Cuomo pending lawsuit, right now negotiations over his unpaid salary, they're looking at it as, this seems unfair. Whether we should see that as being fair or not. They are seeing that as being an unfair way that he's being let go.
Joanna, we've worked in the media business a long time, and it's not surprising to me that someone was acting in a way that was contrary to what the rules and the company handbook said. But at the same time, it is surprising to me in a way how quickly things are changing. I don't think that if you had said to me 5 years ago, a CNN top executive would be out for a consensual relationship he was having with someone, I would have believed that that was actually possible to happen.
Well, and this is also, this is, I think, part of the reason why some people within CNN and outside of CNN are questioning, was this kind of a, I don't know, fig leaf's the right metaphor, but, if the larger reason for firing him had more to do with tensions between Jeff Zucker and Kalar, they, by all reports, did not have the greatest relationship. There's a lot moving and changing at CNN right now. It's a very interesting and tense time to have a big change of leadership. CNN's just weeks away from launching this streaming platform that they've put a lot of energy, money, attention, and kind of future hopes on. And so to kind of to shove out the top leader at this moment is a really interesting and kind of questionable business move.
Justin, where is CNN right now? Obviously the streaming service is important. I had a friend who was watching the morning show on HBO and said, that seems so far-fetched. I went, no, it looks exactly like, it's almost like a documentary in many ways. And CNN is kind of proving that point. They've had a very, very rocky, how long, past 5 years? And is this an opportunity for them to set the sails and get things on a more, predictable way?
Right now, it's very unpredictable right now for where they're going to go. As Joanna was saying, they're getting ready to launch their big digital streaming platform, which, right now, there's a glut of streaming out there. And currently, CNN has seen their ratings plummet over the past year. So it's questionable to think that the streaming option of CNN programming is going to be something that people are going to desire a lot. At the same time, Zucker going away, like you said, there's been a rocky past few years, but just a year or so ago, they had ratings highs and then they plummeted post-Trump. Now without Zucker, you're going to have a lot of CNN personalities that are kind of worried about where their place is at the network. Who's going to be the new leadership? What kind of direction are they going to want to go in? How do I look in this whole new frame of what the new CNN is going to be? Zucker was there for about 10 years, had a very specific vision in mind. Now they're going to have a whole different vision. And am I going to fit into that vision?
Joanne, I want to talk a little bit about the way that we talk about the ratings, and it's very clear that the ratings are very much associated to the Trump era, that people who maybe on an average would not tune into a CNN or an MSNBC were tuning in because they were looking for news and they were looking for opinion. We are about to enter a midterm election year. We're in an election year, a midterm election year. And then soon we're going to start the presidential campaign all over again. Former President Trump emerging and being out more and more. And certainly Zucker got a lot of criticism for highlighting Trump during his campaign. And full disclosure, I'm an employee of NBC Comcast, and when Zucker was at NBC, that's where The Apprentice was. What do you forecast of how these networks, these cable networks, excluding Fox, are going to be covering the midterms and the presidential election? And do you think they're going to be banging the drum in order to get the ratings that they had before?
Well, to take a step back, I mean, part of the issue, and there's a lot of controversy around all of the decisions that Jeff Zucker and others made that boosted ratings during that time period, going back from, or extending from Trump to Cuomo. But really, I think it goes back further. I mean, honestly, the original sin of all of these 24-hour cable networks is this idea that you have 24 hours to fill on the cheap, which leads to these panel discussions that are of questionable value and leads to the need for entertainment taking the place of news. And I remember very clearly during the 2016 election campaign that they'd be doing anyone would be doing a talk show, and Donald Trump would call in from it. Well, we have Donald Trump on the phone from his plane. We have Donald Trump on the phone from a restaurant. We have Donald Trump on the phone from a boat. And anytime he wanted any kind of news coverage, he got what was essentially free advertising by virtue of him being an entertaining figure. And CNN was not the only network to do that, but CNN was a prime platform for Donald Trump to grow his political brand. And there's a lot of question now about what use are these panels? How do these networks that have now become even more partisan and more committed to being pro-Trump or anti-Trump, depending on the network, how do they handle politics in a way that is fair and journalistic when they have set up this apparatus that really does the opposite?
And on the other side of that, Justin, it's been a grim few years, and the Me Too movement, that was also grim, and many people were ousted for good reason in media. But because of the consensual nature of this, I think there's somewhat of a glee in the industry around being able to cover something that's a little gossipy, although these are people's real lives. I want to make sure I'm clear about that, with a real impact to their families. But I am sensing that there's an old-style New York tabloid excitement about covering Zucker's outing from CNN.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, part of it is going to be, they see it as just desserts for Jeff Zucker. Especially if you're talking about right-wing media, it's a way to really just hammer away at him. Say, oh, they put themselves up on this pedestal, but look what was happening here. This was all under the rug the whole time, even though, as we've discussed, it was a consensual relationship, but it was undisclosed. And jumping all aboard it, if you were to look at the New York Daily News, the New York Post, the headlines, they just feel like they write themselves. Fox News they mentioned Jeff Zucker 170 times on their air yesterday after this occurred.
Well, I'm not sure he's going to
they haven't slowed it down either.
I'm not sure he's the ratings meat that they're looking for over there, but I appreciate both of you for this intelligent panel conversation. Justin Baragona, Joanna Weiss, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.